The chamber of the Galactic Council was vast and silent, a place where the most powerful leaders of alien species gathered, a place where every voice could change the fate of the stars. On this day, the silence felt heavy, like the weight of an unseen storm pressing down on every heart. Bright stars burned through the tall windows of the hall, and even they seemed distant and cold, as if they too feared what was being spoken. The counselors sat in their floating seats, whispering in voices that were careful, almost afraid, and the whispers carried one word again and again, a word that made even the bravest feel uneasy. Humans. For thousands of years, the Galactic Council had ruled without question, and every world they touched bowed without resistance, because to resist was to vanish. They crushed fleets, burned cities, erased whole histories, and then they demanded obedience. Species learned to kneel, to bend their heads and live in quiet fear, because survival was better than freedom. But now there was a new species, a small one compared to the old empires, young in the stars and bold beyond measure. They did not bow. They did not bend. They looked at the council with clear eyes and said the words no one had dared say in ages: no. The chamber grew colder as the alien leaders remembered that first meeting. The humans had arrived in ships that were not the largest, not the brightest, but they carried themselves with a strange confidence, a strange fire that no weapon could dim. The council's high speaker, a creature with silver scales and eyes like ice, had told them the ancient words, "You will kneel before the order of the galaxy." And the human envoy, a woman with steady hands and calm breath, had replied, "We kneel to no one." Those words echoed still, haunting the memory of every elder species, because they were not spoken with arrogance but with certainty. Fear spread through the council like a shadow. If one species refused to bow, what if others followed? What if the great chain of power broke? Already in the markets of distant worlds, whispers had started to rise. Traders spoke of humans who built ships in secret, who fought with strange strategies, who valued freedom more than survival. The idea was dangerous, more dangerous than any weapon. Freedom was a spark that could light a fire across the stars, and the council knew that once the fire burned, no fleet could stop it. One counselor, old and scarred from wars of the past, leaned forward and hissed, "We must destroy them now, before the infection spreads." Others nodded, their minds filled with fear of rebellion, but some remained silent, their eyes lost in thought. Could it be that the humans were right? Could it be that the council's rule, built on fear and blood, had lasted too long? These doubts were not spoken aloud, but they hung in the air like hidden knives waiting to cut through the silence. Beyond the chamber, in the cold of space, a ship moved slowly through the dark. It was not one of the council's vessels. It carried no crest, no colors of obedience. It was a human warship, its hull dark as night, its engines glowing like embers. The ship approached the border of council space, its course direct, its purpose unknown. The counselors knew of this ship. Their spies had warned them, and yet seeing it on the holoscreens filled them with dread. It was not the size of the ship that frightened them, but the audacity of it. To cross the border of the council without permission was an act of open defiance, a message written in steel and fire. Inside the ship, humans moved with quiet focus, their voices calm, their eyes sharp. They were not afraid of what lay ahead, because fear was something they had learned to master long ago. They carried stories of Earth, of wars fought and survived, of storms endured and overcome. To them, the council was just another storm, another trial. They did not plan to bow. They did not plan to beg. They planned to stand. Back in the chamber, the high speaker raised its silver head and spoke, its voice trembling with both anger and unease. "If they do not kneel, they will burn. Let this be clear." The words were strong, but the counselors could hear the weakness beneath them. They could feel the fear that no weapon could hide, because the truth was clear to all of them, though few dared to admit it aloud. For the first time in 1,000 years, the council had met a people who would not break. The silence returned deeper than before, stretching through the hall like a shadow without end. Eyes met and turned away. Whispers faded into stillness, and every leader knew what the others were thinking. The humans were coming. The humans were unbroken, and the humans carried something far more dangerous than weapons, something that no empire had been able to crush. They carried hope. Far away, beyond the reach of the council's walls, the human warship drifted closer, its engines humming like the heartbeat of a giant. The stars burned around it, silent witnesses to what was about to begin. In that moment, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath, waiting, watching, afraid. The Council feared the humans because they saw themselves reflected in them, not as they were now, but as they had once been, long ago, before power turned to chains. And in the dark corners of the chamber, where no one dared speak, a single thought whispered through every mind. The age of bowing was ending. The age of humans was beginning. The council chamber did not sleep that night. Its lights burned without pause, and the alien leaders argued in voices sharp and full of fear. They had demanded respect for centuries. They had crushed rebellions before they could grow, but now the humans had spoken with a calm that cut deeper than any weapon. The phrase repeated in every mind, spoken by the envoy with steady breath, "We kneel to no one." Those words had become more dangerous than a fleet, more dangerous than fire, and the counselors knew it. Across the galaxy, the news spread like lightning. On distant worlds, traders whispered of the humans, not as weak creatures, but as challengers. Soldiers of other species heard the tale and felt something stir inside them, a memory of pride long buried. In the quiet corners of mining colonies and shadowed streets of old empires, people spoke the word with awe, human. It was not admiration of power, but admiration of defiance. But the council could not let this seed grow. A choice had to be made, and quickly. The high speaker, with its silver scales shining under the cold lights, lifted a hand and silenced the noise. "They dare insult us in our own chamber. They dare cross our borders without leave. They dare to resist the order of the galaxy. Such a thing cannot be allowed. We will remind them why every species bows." Yet even as the speaker spoke, unease spread through the chamber. They had faced strong foes before, but never one so young. Never ones who looked at death with unshaken eyes. Some counselors wondered if the humans had secrets hidden in their small fleets, some new technology, some unseen ally. Others argued it did not matter, that their combined armadas were too great, too vast, too old to be defeated. While the debate raged in the far reaches of space, the first contact beyond words was beginning. At the edge of council territory, patrol fleets drifted like watchful wolves. They had been warned of human ships, and they prepared to meet them with a display of force. Dozens of massive cruisers waited, their weapons primed, their hulls glowing with ancient sigils of authority. Against them came the human warships, smaller, darker, moving like hunters through the void. When the patrol commander hailed them, the humans did not respond with fear or with apology. A voice came over the channel, steady and calm. "This is the fleet of Earth. We come as equals. We do not bow." The words were simple, but they shook the commander more than threats ever could. For a moment, silence filled the channel, and then the commander, bound by council orders, gave the command. "Weapons ready." The stars flared bright with the first exchange. Alien beams cut across the void, lines of burning light, but the humans did not break. Their ships darted like shadows, weaving through fire, striking with precision that startled their enemies. Where alien fleets moved in old predictable patterns, the humans twisted the rules. They feigned retreat, then returned with strikes from behind. They shut down their signals, vanished from sensors, and reappeared like ghosts. The patrol fleet was built for intimidation, not for surprise. Within minutes, they felt the weight of something new, something they did not understand. Their massive numbers, their shining power, meant little when their enemy refused to fight as expected. Panic rose among the alien captains, voices shouting across their comms, demanding to know where the humans would strike next. Inside one human ship, the crew moved like a single mind. Their commander stood tall, eyes fixed on the stars beyond the glass. "They expect us to bow," she said, voice low but strong. "Let us show them we will stand." And the crew obeyed, their hands steady, their hearts calm. To them, this was not just battle. This was proof that humanity's place among the stars would never be on its knees. Back in the council chamber, reports arrived of the first clash. The patrol fleet had not been destroyed, but it had been forced into retreat, something that had not happened in generations. The silence that followed was thick and bitter. The counselors shifted uneasily in their seats, eyes turning on the high speaker. Fear was growing, and with it came anger. Some shouted for the extermination of humanity, for fleets to be sent to burn their homeworld. Others whispered of caution, for if humans could strike like this now, what else could they do? The speaker's voice rose above the noise, sharp and desperate. "They are nothing. A young race, foolish and reckless. We will break them as we have broken all others. But in the shadows of the chamber, a quiet truth grew louder. Humanity was not like the others. They did not fight to conquer. They did not fight to enslave. They fought because they refused chains. That made them unpredictable, that made them dangerous, because they had nothing to fear but surrender. And surrender was something they would never give. As the council argued, the human fleet withdrew into the dark, leaving behind wreckage and fear. The stars swallowed their ships like secrets, and no one knew where they would strike next. The counselors watched the holoscreens with uneasy eyes, waiting for more reports, waiting for another surprise. The galaxy itself seemed to tremble, as though it sensed that an old order was beginning to crack. And in the silence between words, in the pause between battles, a thought began to rise across the stars, whispered in places where the council's ears could not reach. If humans can resist, perhaps we can too. The stars above the border of council space flickered with the light of burning ships, smoke and fire drifting silently through the void. The first skirmish had ended, not with the easy victory the council had promised, but with humiliation. Patrol fleets, mighty in number, had been forced to retreat from a handful of human warships. For the Galactic Council, this was unthinkable. For the humans, it was only the beginning. Across the galaxy, rumors spread faster than light. In markets, on transport docks, and inside dark taverns, voices whispered the same story. Humans had stood against the council and lived. Many did not believe it at first. To resist the council was madness. To survive was impossible. But the proof lay in the wreckage that drifted in space, in the broken patrol cruisers limping home. For the first time in centuries, the order of the galaxy trembled. The council could not let this defiance go unanswered. Within the Grand Chamber, the High Speaker declared the humans must be crushed completely. Orders were sent to gather fleets from every corner of the stars. Thousands of warships, sleek and ancient, prepared to march toward the humans. Their mission was clear: erase the species that dared to stand tall. But humans had already moved. They did not wait behind their fragile borders. They did not sit and hope the storm would pass. Instead, they carried the storm with them. Their ships were not the largest nor the heaviest, but they were cunning, fast, and built with minds that did not follow the old rules of war. Human commanders studied their enemies not as invincible gods, but as creatures with weaknesses, and those weaknesses would be found. The clash began near a forgotten star, a place chosen by the humans. Council fleets poured into the system in perfect formation, shields bright, weapons glowing like suns. The void shook with the hum of their engines, their confidence strong after centuries of ruling the galaxy. They believed they were unstoppable, and in numbers they were. But humans had never believed in numbers. The first wave of human ships appeared from the shadows of asteroids, firing with precision. They struck not at the strongest ships, but at the weakest links, cutting communication lines, destroying supply carriers, turning order into confusion. The council commanders shouted orders, their fleets twisting to form walls of fire. But every time they turned, the humans were gone. Their ships moved like phantoms, vanishing into the dark, then striking again from angles no one had expected. On one council battleship, the admiral roared in fury, demanding to know how such a small fleet could defy them. "They are insects," he shouted. "Crush them!" Yet even as his voice echoed, a human frigate slipped past his guards, its weapons tearing through the engines of his flagship. Flames spread across the decks, and the admiral's last sight was of a human vessel sliding back into the shadows, as silent as a ghost. The galaxy had never seen tactics like this. For ages, battles were fought with brute force, with lines of ships crashing against each other in storms of fire. But the humans were hunters. They moved like predators in the wild, striking where the enemy was weakest, retreating before the enemy could strike back, using speed and cunning instead of weight and fear. The old empires were not ready. Their pride had blinded them, and now their fleets burned. Inside a human command ship, the captain stood calm, her hands folded behind her back as her crew worked with steady focus. "They believe size is power," she said, her voice carrying through the bridge. "Let them believe it. We will show them the truth." Her crew obeyed, their faces lit by the glow of enemy fire, their spirits unbroken. For them, this was not only war, it was a message to the galaxy. Humanity would not kneel. Hours passed, and the system became a graveyard of ships. Alien cruisers once thought invincible drifted in pieces. their burning remains painting the void with light. Human ships were damaged too, scarred and battered, but they fought on with a fire that no council fleet could extinguish. Every victory, no matter how small, added to the legend. The council had faced countless enemies before, but none who fought like this. None who fought not for conquest, not for empire, but for the simple right to stand free. When the battle ended, silence fell across the stars. The council fleets withdrew, broken and humiliated, leaving behind wreckage and fear. The humans did not chase them. They did not need to. Their message had been delivered in fire and steel. The council was not untouchable anymore. News of the battle raced ahead of the retreating ships. On distant worlds, slaves whispered of rebellion. On mining colonies, workers looked at the sky with new hope. Even among the council's own people, fear began to twist into doubt. If the humans could defeat fleets, what else could they do? If they could stand against the council, what stopped others from trying? Back in the chamber, the High Speaker listened to the reports with trembling rage. Their fleets had been defeated not by numbers, not by greater firepower, but by a people who refused to bow. The speaker slammed a clawed hand against the table, voice sharp with fury. They are a disease. If we do not crush them now, their defiance will spread. It will infect the galaxy. But beneath the fury lay a truth that no words could hide. The council was afraid, truly afraid, and fear, once sown, was not easily erased. Far from the chamber, in the quiet of space, human ships drifted in silence, their crews tending to the wounded, repairing the scars of battle. They had won, but they knew this was only the start. The council would come again, stronger, angrier, more desperate. Yet the humans were ready. They had no throne to defend, no empire to lose. They had only their freedom, and they would fight for it until the stars themselves went dark. And in that silence, across the galaxy, a question began to rise, a question that shook the old order to its core. If humans could fight the council and win, then why should anyone else bow? The battlefield near the forgotten star still glowed with drifting wreckage, the silence of space broken only by the slow crackle of burning hulls. For the Galactic Council, the humiliation was too much to bear. They had gathered fleets, the strongest in known history, and yet they had been driven back by a species so young it was barely counted among the stars. Anger burned in the council chambers, but beneath that anger lay a deeper fear, because no one could understand how the humans had done it. Their ships were smaller, their numbers fewer, their weapons less advanced. And yet they had vanished like mist, reappearing where no one expected, striking with precision, then melting away as if the void itself had swallowed them. The council called it a trick, a coward's tactic. But whispers spread through the galaxy, whispers that told another story. The humans had a fleet that could disappear, a fleet that moved unseen through the dark. The aliens gave it a name out of fear and fascination, the Ghost Fleet. In the next campaign, the council prepared for vengeance. Dozens of fleets gathered once more, their admirals swearing they would end the human threat forever. They studied the battle, tried to predict the strange maneuvers, tried to build countermeasures. But no matter how much they planned, there was one thing they did not understand. The humans did not fight by rules written in council books. They fought like survivors, like predators, like shadows. The council fleets entered another system, expecting to find the humans waiting. At first the stars were calm, the void empty. The admirals grew uneasy. Then, without warning, explosions tore through their supply ships. Carriers burst into flames, communication relays went dark, and entire lines of cruisers fell into confusion. The attackers were invisible, their movements unreadable. By the time scanners caught a glimpse, the human ships had already vanished again, slipping behind debris fields, hiding inside the shadows of moons, or shutting down their engines until they were indistinguishable from drifting rock. On one flagship, the admiral slammed a fist against the console. They are not fighting. They are playing tricks. But fear was in his voice because his fleet was bleeding, and he could not strike back. Every time he moved his forces, the humans appeared where he was weakest. Every time he thought he had them trapped, they disappeared again, like phantoms mocking his every command. Inside the human ghost fleet, the atmosphere was calm, but electric. Crew members whispered to each other as they moved, every action precise, every maneuver executed with trust and discipline. They knew they were outnumbered. And they knew every alien ship was larger, but that did not matter. Their commander's voice carried through the comms, steady and unshaken. We are the storm in their blind spot. We are the shadow at their back. Remember this, fear is stronger than any weapon, and fear was spreading quickly. Entire alien squadrons broke formation when a single human ship appeared behind them. Admirals screamed orders to regroup, but the panic spread faster than discipline could hold. It was not just the destruction of ships. It was the not knowing where the next strike would fall. The Council fleets were not fighting an enemy they could see. They were fighting the darkness itself. Word of these battles traveled faster than light. On worlds across the galaxy, slaves and subjects whispered of the Ghost Fleet. Children played games where they pretended to vanish like humans and strike against their oppressors. Even soldiers serving under the Council began to doubt. How could they fight shadows? How could they fight an enemy that refused to fear them? The Council leaders, watching from the safety of their chambers, grew desperate. Reports piled in of shattered fleets, of admirals lost in the chaos, of crews refusing to face the humans again. One counselor, his voice trembling, spoke what others dared not. What if they cannot be stopped? The chamber fell silent because it was the question that haunted them all. But not all were cowards. Some demanded the ultimate answer. Build a weapon so vast, so terrible that no shadow could hide from it. Plans began to form for a new superweapon, one that could burn entire systems at once. Yet even as they dreamed of this weapon, they knew it would take time, and time was the one thing the humans would not give them. The humans, meanwhile, did not gloat in their victories. On their ships, they patched hulls, mourned their dead, and sharpened their tactics. They were not fighting for glory. They were fighting for survival. Every battle won was a message humanity would not bow. Every strike carried hope to distant worlds that had forgotten what freedom felt like. The humans understood something the Council had never cared to learn. Fear could break chains just as easily as fleets. At the end of one such battle, as the Ghost Fleet slipped back into the silence of space, the commander stood at the window of her ship. The wreckage of alien warships floated beyond, drifting like broken monuments of an old order. Her crew stood beside her, waiting for words, but she spoke only one sentence, soft but powerful. They are afraid of us not because of what we have, but because of what we are. And in that truth lay the beginning of something far greater. The Ghost Fleet was not just a tactic. It was a symbol. A symbol that the Council's power, once thought unshakable, was crumbling. A symbol that the galaxy could change. But in the heart of the Council, the High Speaker's voice rose like thunder. If they will not bow, they will burn. Build the weapon. Bring the fire of 1,000 suns upon them. And so as the Ghost Fleet disappeared once more into the endless dark, the seeds of a greater war were planted. The humans had shown they could strike from the shadows. The Council now swore to answer with fire bright enough to burn away every shadow in the galaxy. Yet in that vow of destruction, they did not see the danger. For the more they tried to crush humanity, the more the galaxy itself began to dream of freedom. Fear was no longer contained within the chambers of the Galactic Council. It spilled out across the stars, seeping into markets, mines, and colonies where the Council's grip had long felt unbreakable. The tales of the humans of the Ghost Fleet that vanished into shadows and reappeared like fire from the void spread faster than any fleet could travel. Every drifting wreck of a Council warship told the story more clearly than words ever could. The order of the galaxy was no longer absolute. On distant worlds, workers who had bent their backs for generations paused to whisper the forbidden name: humans. The word carried more weight than any rebellion speech because it meant possibility. It meant someone had defied the masters and survived. Children played in the dust, pretending their tiny sticks were human ships darting around massive Council cruisers, shouting in laughter, "We do not bow." Their parents hushed them, fearful of the overseers, but inside their hearts something long dead stirred awake. For centuries the Council had ruled through fear. They had not needed to inspire loyalty, only obedience. But fear, once cracked, spread like fire through dry grass. Stories of human victories became bigger with every retelling. One ship became 100. A small skirmish became the destruction of whole fleets. Even the smallest spark of truth was enough to ignite hope. The Council tried to smother the stories. They silenced traitors, executed messengers, and broadcast their own lies of human defeats. But silence is fragile when rumors fly faster than light. The more they tried to bury the truth, the more people believed it. Entire species, once bowed and broken, began to ask dangerous questions. If the humans could resist, why couldn't they? In secret, messages began to slip through the cracks of the Council's control. Smugglers carried coded signals hidden in shipments. Pirate bands whispered to human captains in the dark corners of asteroid belts. Even within the Council's own fleets, low-ranking soldiers sent secret transmissions across the stars. They all carried the same plea: help us. Show us how to stand. The humans, scattered and outnumbered, received these messages with quiet resolve. They were not conquerors. They did not seek thrones or crowns, but they knew what it meant to be broken, to be ruled by fear. Many among them argued that helping would be dangerous, that their own survival was already uncertain. Yet the voices of their commanders were steady. If we fight only for ourselves, we are no different from them. We fight so no one kneels again. Meanwhile, inside the council chamber, fear twisted into rage. Reports arrived daily of unrest on distant worlds, strikes in the mines, uprisings in the slave camps, soldiers refusing orders. It was not yet open rebellion, but it was spreading, and the counselors knew the source. Every whisper, every flicker of hope pointed back to the humans. One counselor pounded the table with a trembling claw. They are poisoning the galaxy with their defiance. If this continues, we will lose everything. Another, her voice sharp and filled with dread, hissed, "It is already happening." Fear no longer belongs to us. It belongs to them. The high speaker, scales gleaming under the cold light, raised its voice above the chaos. Then we must burn away the infection. Fear spreads like shadow, and only fire can end shadow. Build the weapon. No more hesitation. The chamber fell silent. Every counselor knew what weapon the speaker meant. A weapon spoken of only in whispers, so destructive it could consume entire systems. A weapon that would not just destroy humans, but make an example of them so brutal that no other species would ever dream of rebellion again. Even as the council plotted their vengeance, human fleets moved quietly through the dark. They met with rebels in secret, sharing knowledge, sharing hope. A mining colony on the edge of the galaxy rose against its overseers after receiving a single human transmission: "Stand. We will stand with you." Their revolt was small, their weapons crude, but their courage lit a signal fire that spread far and wide. The galaxy had begun to change, not through conquest, but through whispers, through courage, through the simple truth that chains could be broken. The humans had not only fought the council, they had proven the council could bleed. And once an empire bleeds, its subjects no longer see it as eternal. On one council-controlled world, a governor stared at the unrest boiling in his city. His soldiers struggled to hold back the crowds, their chants echoing into the night. He turned to his aide, his voice trembling. This was never supposed to happen. Fear was supposed to keep them silent. The aide only shook her head. Fear no longer belongs to us. It belongs to the humans now. In the void of space, aboard a scarred human warship, the commander gazed out at the stars. Around her floated allies, pirate ships painted black, stolen freighters retrofitted with crude weapons, miners' vessels carrying brave crews who had chosen to fight. They were not powerful, not yet. But they were rising. She spoke softly, her voice carried across the comms. The council fears us. That is good. But more important than that, the people believe in us. And belief is stronger than any fleet. The stars shimmered cold and endless, as though they too were listening. The council prepared its fire. The humans prepared their stand. And across the galaxy, billions of voices whispered in unison a truth that could no longer be buried. The age of fear was breaking. The age of defiance had begun. The galaxy trembled as rumors of rebellion spread, but in the core chambers of the Galactic Council, rage burned hotter than fear. The counselors had tasted humiliation, their fleets shattered by shadows, their authority mocked by whispers of freedom. They would not endure it any longer. They would not allow their empire, built on centuries of fear, to crumble because of one young, stubborn species. And so, in the darkness of their forges, the council began to shape their answer, an answer forged not in strategy, but in fire. The weapon was no rumor now. It was real. Vast as a moon, its surface gleamed with black steel and glowing veins of energy. It had no name but one whispered in fear by those who built it: the Starbreaker. Designed to harness the collapsing heart of a dying star, it could unleash destruction powerful enough to erase entire fleets, entire planets in a single pulse of burning light. To the Council, it was not just a weapon. It was a message. If humanity would not bow, humanity would burn. The trap was set near the fading light of a red giant. Council fleets gathered in silence, thousands of ships hiding in the shadows of the dying star. They knew the humans would come. The Council had leaked false information, whispers of weakness, hints of a vulnerable convoy carrying resources to fuel the war. It was bait, and the humans, bold and defiant, would not resist striking at the Council once more. When the Ghost Fleet arrived, they did so with the same confidence that had carried them through battles before. Their ships slipped out of the void, black against the dying star, moving like hunters ready to strike. But this time, the hunters were walking into the jaws of a beast older and far more terrible than anything they had yet faced. The first wave of human ships darted forward, their weapons flashing. A few Council vessels broke apart in fire, giving the humans the illusion of early victory. But then, from the shadows, the full might of the Council's armada revealed itself. Ship after ship decloaked, massive dreadnoughts, cruisers, and carriers filling the void like a wall of steel. Their numbers were overwhelming, their formation tight, their weapons already primed, and at their center the Starbreaker stirred, its surface glowing brighter as it fed on the dying star's energy. The human commanders understood the truth at once. This was not just a battle, this was a trap designed to end them. Reports shouted across human comms, enemy fleets everywhere, numbers beyond counting, weapons locked on every vector. For the first time since the war began, some voices cracked with fear. The Council fleets opened fire, and the void erupted in a storm of light. Lasers cut across the dark, missiles streaked through the emptiness, and explosions flared like suns. Human ships twisted and darted, fighting with the same unpredictable ferocity that had baffled the Council before. But this time the Council did not falter. They had studied, they had planned, and they had prepared for every trick. One by one, human ships fell under the weight of endless fire. Frigates broke apart, destroyers burned, cruisers vanished in bursts of flame. The humans fought back with fury, striking at weak points, breaking formations, but for every alien ship destroyed, 3 more filled the gap. The Council had thrown everything into this battle, and it showed. On the bridge of a human flagship, the commander stood tall despite the chaos around her. The deck shook with every impact, alarms screamed, and smoke filled the air. Yet her voice was steady. They want us afraid. They want us broken, but we are not here to kneel. We are here to stand, fight. Her crew obeyed, their hands steady even as the ship groaned under the weight of fire. And then the Starbreaker awoke. The dying star pulsed, its surface tearing with streams of white-hot plasma as the weapon drank its energy. Lights across the Council fleets dimmed as power was redirected to feed the monstrous machine. The glow spread across its surface, brighter and brighter, until it cast shadows across the battlefield. Every alien commander knew what was coming. Every human commander feared it. The Starbreaker was about to fire. The humans saw the weapon charging, its surface alive with fire, its aim locked on a single target, Earth. Though the homeworld was light years away, the Council's plan was clear. The Starbreaker was not meant for this battle alone. It was meant to send a message across the galaxy. Resistance would mean annihilation, even for the heart of humanity itself. The commander's voice cut across the human comms. They have built their fire. Now we must outlast it. Every ship focus on that weapon. If it fires, it is not just Earth that dies. It is hope itself. Human ships broke formation, striking with reckless courage. They tore through dreadnoughts, sacrificing themselves to clear paths toward the Starbreaker. Entire crews rammed their ships into enemy carriers, igniting explosions that lit the void. For every human ship that fell, another pushed forward, their determination burning brighter than the dying star behind them. Yet the weapon continued to charge, its glow now brighter than the star itself. The counselors, watching from their chamber far away, smiled with cruel satisfaction. "Let them fight," the High Speaker whispered. "Let them bleed. When the Starbreaker fires, the galaxy will remember who holds power." The battlefield was chaos. Human voices filled the comms, some crying out in pain, others in defiance. Alien fleets pressed harder, desperate to shield the weapon. And still the glow grew brighter. The weapon was almost ready, and then, through the fire and wreckage, the Ghost Fleet did what it did best. Human ships vanished from sensors, slipping into the shadows of the chaos. Alien commanders screamed warnings, but it was too late. From the darkness, human warships emerged at the Starbreaker's flank, weapons blazing, engines burning at full power. The Starbreaker trembled as explosions rippled across its surface. Its glow faltered, then flared even brighter, unstable, dangerous. Human ships pressed harder, their guns cutting deep, their crews willing to sacrifice everything to stop the fire before it reached Earth. But as the battle raged, the glow reached its peak, brighter than any sun, so bright that even the human commanders felt the breath of death upon them. The Starbreaker was ready to fire. The galaxy seemed to hold its breath. The glow of the Starbreaker filled the void like a false sun, burning brighter than the dying star it fed upon. Across the battlefield, human crews stared in silence, their faces lit by the white fire of the weapon. It was no longer a rumor, no longer a whisper in council chambers. It was real, it was alive, and it was aimed at the heart of humanity. Earth itself, every human knew what that meant. The cradle of their species, the home they had carried in their hearts across the stars, was about to be erased. The Council had chosen not just to win, but to destroy the idea of humanity forever. If Earth was lost, then the stories, the hope, the spirit that drove them would be broken. The humans did not need an order to act. They knew with every beat of their hearts that this was their last stand. On the bridge of a battered cruiser, a young officer whispered as if to himself, "If Earth falls, nothing matters." His commander placed a hand on his shoulder, her eyes hard, her voice steady. "Then Earth will not fall, not while we breathe." Her words carried through the comms, and soon every ship, every crew repeated them like a prayer. Earth will not fall. The human fleets regrouped, their formations ragged, their numbers thinned, but their determination unbroken. Around them, allies who had once been strangers, smugglers, miners, traders, even pirates, now flew side by side with warships. They had answered humanity's call not for conquest but for freedom. Their ships were crude compared to Council vessels, but each pilot fought with a fire that no training could teach. They fought because they wanted to live free, and because the humans had shown them it was possible. The Council fleets pressed forward, confident, merciless. Their admirals barked orders with cold satisfaction. To them, the humans were insects, a nuisance that would be crushed beneath the brilliance of the Starbreaker. They believed this battle was already won, but belief is fragile when met with defiance. Human ships darted into the firestorm, their weapons striking at the weapon's shielding, their hulls burning as they tried to break through. Entire crews sacrificed themselves in ramming runs, igniting explosions that shook the vast structure. The Starbreaker trembled, but its glow did not fade. Instead, it grew brighter, its core pulsing with power, the light spreading across its surface like veins of fire. On Earth, far away, the skies filled with fear. Civilian ships prepared to flee, though there was nowhere safe to run. Families clutched each other, watching the heavens as if they could see the weapon across the stars. The leaders of Earth broadcast a single message across every channel: "Stand, do not bow. Humanity fights for you." The message was heard not only by humans, but by countless other species hidden under the Council's rule. For them, the words were like thunder. Back at the battle, the humans unveiled their last secret. For years, hidden in asteroid belts and drifting debris fields, they had been building ships in silence. They were not large, not elegant, but they were many. At the signal, these hidden ships jumped into the battlefield, their engines blazing, their guns opening fire with fury. The Ghost Fleet had multiplied, and now it struck with everything it had. Council commanders howled in outrage. Their fleets turned to meet the new threat, but in doing so they left the Starbreaker's defenses weaker. The humans pressed harder, swarming like fire ants, their small ships gnawing at the giant weapon. Explosions rippled across its surface, tearing holes in its armor, though still the glow built higher, threatening to consume everything. The commander of the Ghost Fleet stood on her bridge, smoke filling the air, sparks raining from shattered panels. Her ship was half destroyed, but her voice was iron. "This is our world," they threaten. "This is our moment. If we fall standing." Her crew cheered through their fear, their hands steady as they hurled their wounded ship into the heart of the fire. The battle raged like no other. Human miners rammed their heavy drilling ships into Council destroyers, tearing them apart. Civilian freighters armed with stolen cannons fought beside Navy frigates. Even the smallest shuttle became a weapon, its pilot ready to give their life to protect Earth. It was not just soldiers who fought now, it was all of humanity. And yet, despite their courage, the Starbreaker's light reached its peak. The weapon roared to life, drawing in the last breath of the dying star. Its surface glowed so bright that even council captains turned their eyes away, fearful of the power they had unleashed. The energy gathered, focused, aimed. The weapon was ready to fire. In the final seconds, silence swept the battlefield. Both fleets, human and council, seemed to pause as though the galaxy itself waited. The humans stared into the light, knowing it was death. The council smiled in triumph, believing victory was certain. And then, from the shadows, the last reserve of the Ghost Fleet revealed itself. A cluster of ships that had been silent, hiding in the wreckage of fallen allies, surged forward with engines burning. They carried no intent to survive. Their only goal was to strike the Starbreaker's core before it fired. One by one, they plunged into the weapon's glowing heart, their detonations shaking its massive frame. The light faltered, then flared out of control. Energy screamed across its surface, too much, too unstable, too wild to be contained. Council captains shouted in terror, ordering retreats, but it was too late. The Starbreaker shuddered, its brilliance turning to chaos. Instead of a single beam of death, its energy lashed outward in wild, uncontrolled streams. Alien ships were torn apart in an instant, council fleets ripped to shreds by the very weapon they had built. On human comms, voices cried in both fear and hope. The weapon had not yet been stopped, but it had been wounded. The question that hung across the stars was simple and terrible. Would humanity survive the blast that was coming, or would their last stand become their final moment? The galaxy held its breath as the Starbreaker's core reached the edge of collapse. The Starbreaker convulsed like a wounded beast, its surface splitting with cracks of blinding light. What was meant to be the Council's greatest triumph had become a storm they could not control. Instead of a clean, precise beam aimed at Earth, the weapon spat chaos into the void. Streams of wild energy lashed outward, tearing through anything in their path. Whole Council squadrons were incinerated in seconds, their ships turning to molten wreckage as the blast washed over them. The proud fleets that once believed themselves eternal now burned like paper in a fire. The humans pressed forward through the chaos, their ships battered, their crews exhausted, but their spirit unbroken. Every surviving vessel fought with the desperation of those who knew this was the final battle. The Starbreaker could not be left to fire again, not even once. If it lived, humanity's dream of freedom would die. On the bridge of the Ghost Fleet's flagship, alarms screamed, smoke filled the air, and panels sparked under the strain. The commander stood tall despite the destruction, her voice carrying through the comms to every human ship. This is it. This is the moment the galaxy will remember. Not tomorrow. Not next year. Today. We fight until the fire itself bows to us. Her words spread like lightning. Across the battlefield, human miners rammed their heavy rigs into the Starbreaker's defenses, tearing apart its outer layers. Traitors, their ships barely more than metal shells with guns welded on, dove into the storm of enemy fire, creating openings for the Navy. Even the smallest shuttle threw itself into the fray, its pilot willing to burn if it meant striking one more blow. Humanity had become one fist, clenched tight and aimed straight at the heart of tyranny. The Council fleets tried to regroup, but it was hopeless. Their formations crumbled under the madness of their own weapon. Admirals screamed orders that no one followed, their voices drowned in panic. For the first time in centuries, their soldiers did not fear their masters more than death. They feared the humans. They feared the chaos, and fear once turned does not return. The Starbreaker's glow faltered as human fire tore into its core. Explosions rippled across its vast frame, each one shaking the battlefield with thunder. Still it clung to life, feeding hungrily on the last breaths of the dying star behind it. Its creators had built it to be indestructible, and for a moment, it seemed it might outlast even humanity's fury. Then the final sacrifice came. A cluster of human ships, already crippled and burning, made their choice. They turned their bows toward the heart of the Starbreaker and pushed their engines to full power. One pilot, his voice calm despite the flames consuming his ship, spoke softly over the comms. "Tell Earth." We stood. His vessel vanished into the weapon's core, and a chain of detonations followed as others rammed in after him. The Starbreaker's defenses shattered under the weight of their courage. The weapon screamed as if alive, its light surging out of control. The dying star collapsed into its maw, flooding it with more energy than it could contain. In one final blinding burst, the Starbreaker tore itself apart. The explosion rolled across the void like a second sun being born, vaporizing Council fleets, scattering debris across the stars. When the light faded, silence fell. The battlefield was a graveyard, wreckage drifting in all directions. Many human ships were gone, but so were the prideful fleets of the Council. The Ghost Fleet, scarred and broken, floated in the ruins. The humans had not been destroyed. Against every expectation, against every law of power the Council had believed eternal, humanity had survived. The Council chamber was chaos. Reports of the Starbreakers' destruction poured in. Their fleet shattered, their weapon lost. The High Speaker roared in fury, demanding vengeance, but the other councillors no longer looked at it with obedience. Fear had shifted. They no longer feared the humans alone. They feared their own people. Across the galaxy, rebellions were rising. Worlds long silent now shouted in defiance. Chains that had held for centuries snapped one by one. On Earth, the signal finally came. The battered Ghost Fleet sent a message home. The commander, her voice cracked but steady, spoke to all of humanity and to every world listening. The Council said we would kneel. They said we would burn. But we are still here. We fought not to rule, not to conquer, but to stand free. And now the galaxy stands with us. Never bow again. Cheers erupted across Earth. Families wept in relief, children shouted in joy, and soldiers stood with pride. But it was not only humans who listened. On distant worlds, slaves lifted their heads. Miners threw down their tools. Soldiers of the Council laid down their arms. The spirit of defiance had spread too far to be contained. The Council tried to hold on to power, but their fleets were shattered, their weapon gone, their fear broken. One by one, species rose against them, emboldened by the humans' stand. The galaxy shifted like a tide breaking against rocks, sweeping away the old order. For the first time in living memory, freedom was no longer a dream whispered in shadows. It was real. In the void, among the ruins of the Starbreaker, the surviving human ships drifted in silence. Crews mourned the lost, honored the fallen, and repaired what they could. They did not speak of ruling the galaxy, nor of taking the throne the Council had left empty. That was never their goal. Humanity did not rise to conquer. Humanity rose to remind the galaxy of a truth it had forgotten, that no one was born to kneel. The commander of the Ghost Fleet stood at the window of her ship, watching the wreckage glitter like broken stars. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. We are only the beginning. And in that silence, as freedom spread from world to world, the galaxy remembered the day fear changed hands. The day the Council fell. The day the humans refused to bow.